Through Zoom. Good. Let me go back to going share, and I can get up my screen up here. And it's nice to hear everybody's background and to see that there's a lot of people who are in the apprenticeship world doing very important things. So let's go ahead and get moving. I spoke a little bit about Switzerland and the Memorandum of Understanding. I understand that the reason we're here today is to learn a little bit about how Switzerland does what it does in the world of apprenticeship. So I will tell you a little bit about that, and I want to tell you that we'll talk about this for about 10 or 15 minutes. Your eyes might go a little bit glossy over the complexity of it in Switzerland, but don't let that bother you. It's very adaptable here to the United States, which is generally the message that we have here at the embassy. But Switzerland has a 400-year head start on us, so I don't think we should try and play any catch-up game with that. So the apprenticeship goes back a long time. Apprentice, of course, means to learn by doing, to be educated, to be given instruction, and to learn a skill. This is where it originally came from. Why do companies decide to train? Well, as I said, 400 years of tradition. We also have a long tradition here in the United States also of apprenticeships. It kind of dropped off in the 70s. I think a lot of people of my age remember that. However, in Switzerland, it's a tradition there. And when you talk to the people about apprenticeship, it's really important that you talk to the companies and they say, well, why do I train these people? What happens if I train them and what happens if I train them and they get up and leave? And I tell them, what happens if you don't train them and they stay? Because this is a problem that you're going to have in the world of companies. You're going to need to be able to train. So that means that if your apprentice, after graduating after 3 years or 4 years, has decided they don't like the exact offer they're being given, they take their credentials and they get up and they go. And as the door is shutting on the way out, someone else is coming in who is applying for that very job, who just finished their apprenticeship in a neighboring business also who's done this. And the manager will look at this and realize that, it's a revolving door. The apprenticeship it's a raising tide that lifts all ships. Saving and recruiting and insertion costs. Yes, this is true. So when you hire an apprentice in Switzerland, they get hired for 3 years, between 2, 3, or 4 years, and they're hired by the company. The exchange is between the company and the parents and the children of the ages of 15, 16, 17. A contract is signed, and this is where they stay. So you don't have a lot of turnover in the apprenticeship world. Of course, a 15 or 16-year-old is not going to necessarily be happy wherever he or she is. So yes, there is turnaround and change, but not at the level that we know here, sort of like the revolving door of fast food or something like that. When you hire somebody, they come in, they will go to school for 2 or 3 years, which I'll talk about in a few moments. They work 50%, maybe 70% of the company. They get a salary. The salary is low. Okay, the salary is low because these are 15, 16, 17-year-olds. This is the way that they earn money, and as they gradually move forward in their 2 to 3 to 4 years, they become an asset to the company. They begin to produce, and they produce real money. And there are return on investment studies about the Swiss model, and I think I have some documentation on that I'd be able to share after this. The net benefits, well, the investment in qualified workforce is you get to train the people when they're young. They don't pick up any bad habits and show up somewhere else, halfway learned in their 40s. Nothing wrong with that, but the benefit of this is training your workforce in a controlled environment, and also together with the schooling, which I'll talk about, as I said. Staying at the forefront of innovation. Yes, Switzerland is actually number one in innovation, I think 3 years in a row. And I think this can be traced back to the apprenticeship model, because you've got a lot of people working with their hands. They're in there working, they're doing things. And what happens if after 4 or 5 years that apprentice is now graduated and is working and says, hey, why don't we try it like this? And voila, there's your innovation, is people who are doing things, they get it done, they see it, and they are innovative. And I think that Switzerland has nothing but the apprenticeship system to thank for that. And social responsibility. Yes, I'm also telling people quite often, this is not necessarily an altruistic thing in Switzerland. They're in it for the money. And they're in it because they're in business. It is not altruism at all, and that has to be taught here too. Is it's competitive? Is the young people do compete for the positions? Government is not involved any of this. There are clearinghouses that help the young people decide where they want to go, like a clearinghouse for people who are doing metal industry, or a clearinghouse for those who are going to be doing the commercial apprenticeship, websites that show the different jobs at different places. Yes, but it's in the end, it's a hire between the company and the apprentice. Social responsibility is part of it, but again, it makes money. So let's move on. Yes, this is one of my favorite old movies from the old days. Is just because you called it an apprenticeship doesn't mean it necessarily is. So I really want to make this clear. It's a skill. It's a learned skill that you have to be able to acquire through mentorship. It doesn't have to be necessarily hand skills, but they're quite often the commercial apprenticeship, for example. I've spoken about that, and I will in a few minutes too. They get mentored also at the desk, and they're shown exactly how to work in the white collar position they've been hired for in the HR department or the accounting department. It's a skill. So calling things apprenticeships, I'm very, very careful with, and I throw a bit of a jaundiced eye onto some of these things before I can get a smile out of myself for this. It's very important that this isn't just an afternoon school job. Apprenticeship is truly learned, and it's mentored, and it's supposed to come with a well, theoretically, it should come with a nice final diploma or certificate which they can build on. So yes, you eventually learn, wax on, wax off, eventually get good at what you do. This is what an apprenticeship is. The dual education system in Switzerland, and this is where I said, don't let any of this daunt you or make you worry that this is not reproducible in the United States. It most certainly is. So compulsory education, we know, is through K through 12. In Switzerland, and also in most of Europe, also is 15 to 16 years old, depending. That's the compulsory education, and then they'll go into a different higher education. And in Switzerland, 2/3 of young people go into vocational education training. Yes, that's right. 2/3 of young people between the ages of 15 and 18 are going to go into vocational education. They're not going directly to the university. 30% will go to the senior high school. These are going to be people who are more into theoretical sciences or more into theoretical studies, as opposed to work-based learning or work skills education, which would be those 2/3 of people are going to be integrating very directly with companies and learning from companies, and also being in school. As you can see in the colors here, the green and the yellow is nicely blended. The senior high school, for somebody who's going to go on to the senior high school, for example, they'll go for 2 more years. They have to take languages. They have to pass a series of tests. They're very rigorous. And then they can go on to the university after that and study. They can study history. They can study sociology. The 2/3 of the young people will do some blend of work and some blend of education, depending on the employer, depending on the apprenticeship. And they will then get some type of diploma at the end. And I tell people, my last boss, Simon was an apprentice at Novartis for years. And he decided he didn't want to work doing that anymore. And he went through it and took some, I would show you on this little flow chart. But he took the tests, and he went to the schools, and he got his PhD in political science. So it is permeable. This is really important for people to realize. And when you talk to parents and when you talk to everybody, is no, they're not going to be there forever. If they are, they're welcome. Welcome to stay. Welcome to stay. There's always going to be training in our company, but you're not expected to stay where you are forever and ever. You're supposed to go and get an education. You're supposed to move on and get further training. That's the way it works in Switzerland. And so this is your little graphic here. Now I'm going to stop here to see if there's a question or two, because I'm going to start talking a lot and I don't want to overwhelm. Please. I'll move on then.
This is Jim Rose. I have a question.
Yeah, Jim.
What's the difference? Yeah, the higher professional education and the University of Applied Sciences.
That's it.
Which is which, and which occupations, and what's the difference?
Sure, absolutely. This is so there are 2 systems of higher education in Switzerland. It's going to be universities of applied sciences and then universities themselves. In America, we don't split the 2. For example, you can go to Virginia Tech, which would sort of be a university of applied sciences where there's a lot of technology being taught, a lot of integration with business. And then you can also study advanced religious studies at Virginia Tech, and that would be university, for example, for the liberal arts. So in Switzerland, they're separated. The University of Applied Sciences, there's 13 of them, and this is where they will learn. For example, you'll get a bachelor's degree in management, or a master's degree in applied accounting, something that's going to be very business related. And at the university level, again, you can study. You think of the liberal arts. Go to town. That's where you study these things in the universities. And in higher professional education, that's going to be diploma based, and that's also going to be certificate based. So, for example, if you're working in the elevator industry, there's always new technologies coming out, and people go to get higher education. They go to get training. They might go for a month to Germany, to Schindler, or someplace, and study for a month in the United States or anywhere, and they will then sort of attract, almost like a Chinese menu, as pieces of further education. So those are not going to be necessarily a school that you go to. They're going to be opportunities for training, maybe in schools, but across the board. And then the other area, as you see down towards the work area, there's just people, like I say, they can stay and they can work the floor all their lives, and they can get continuing education if they want, and they don't have to take it if they don't want to.
What does that mean, that the folks who are in the vocational education and training, where it says 70%, obviously it looks like the bigger color is work. Does that mean a very substantial number of the kids in that box are getting no classroom instruction?
When you say the box here that says 70%, that says vocational education training, is that the box you're looking at?
Right.
No, those are all going to be. There is going to be some training going on. There wouldn't be. I don't think that you could possibly color this whole box green or do a blend. But I think what they're trying to simply show is that there is going to be some training. But of course, don't forget, if you do vocational education and you're doing really just a janitor or a maintenance position, I don't want to say just, but if you're doing something that really requires hardly any training, then maybe there is not a school component to that. Maybe there is just work-based training, and that would be it. So yes, there are some people who simply just don't go to school anymore after this period of time, and they work, and the apprenticeship system does find a place for them to work.
But to try to analogize to the United States, I mean, the way we conceptualize apprenticeship is there's on-the-job learning and there's classroom learning. That's the way registered apprenticeships work in the United States. And he's saying that it works that way for a lot of apprentices in Switzerland, but not all apprentices.
There are 238 apprenticeship vocations that I can't speak for all of them right now. It's a good question.
Sure.
There may very well be positions where there is very little education or none at all. And I don't want to say that right now because I'm a little bit worried about giving you sort of information about more of a fringe concept or worry. But I mean, there are people who at the age of 16, they finish compulsory education and say, I don't want to go to school. I don't want to do anything. I'm just going to go and work part-time at McDonald's. And that's what they do. And so they might be putting these people into that area too of the post-compulsory education. Would that help?
Yeah, that's something. It would be interesting though if there is any data on that at some point to get a sense of that.
A data on specifically.
Well, what percentage of compulsory education graduates get no classroom training? They get on-the-job training, obviously, but no classroom training, by age 25 or something like that. That would just be interesting to see. Is it 2% or is it 20% in Switzerland?
I think a while back. No, I see what you're saying now. It's a good question. And I think a while back I had seen statistics like that. I think it's about 5% of people who just simply don't go for any education whatsoever. But I will look and see if I can find some information. But it's a small amount. The majority of people go this route that you see on this slide.
Great, thank you.
Sure. So next
Hey
slide.
Trace, Tracy,
Yes.
actually, I had a question here. The You were mentioning earlier that in Switzerland, 15, 16, 17-year-olds are already getting contracts and essentially getting to an employer who's paying them. Could you maybe share just generally like how much, and I'm trying to think like maybe like as a percentage of what a full-time starting role would be, how much wages would sort of someone in let's call a 16-year-old high school student be earning for that 50-60% of their time worth of work?
I actually did this activity for Bob Lerman over at the Urban Institute a while back. We looked at some of the wages there. Now, again, these are 15, 16. They're not going to get wealthy. They're theoretically also still living at home. So this is again the Swiss model. So they make between I think $10 and $13 an hour for somebody who's a painter, meaning painting houses, painting interiors, and then it graduates and goes higher when they finally finish their apprenticeship. And there's some apprentices in very, very highly sought after careers, which is like IT and cybersecurity. They start out making about $18 an hour and maybe as much as 22. The statistics I had are probably about 4 years ago, so maybe that's even gone up even further. So it is incentivized by the career as to how much they're going to make. So you can make a pretty penny if you're in the right thing, which is basically any job that you get anywhere is what kind of job can you get, what can you do.
Got it. Is that a minimum wage, by the way, or is that? I mean, is there a
No,
minimum
it's
wage in
not a
Switzerland?
minimum
No.
wage. Ah, good question. I don't believe there's a federal minimum wage. I think that there are other categories that you have to follow. That's a good question. I'm going to have to look and see how the private sector wage is there about a minimum wage. Good question. I will check back and get back to Sarah on that.
Great, thank you.
So again, the dual education system. This is what Switzerland does: is you get one of these two possibilities: is a 2-year federal certificate, which is also stackable, or a 3 or 4-year federal diploma. The diploma comes with also a test. You have to take a certain amount of tests, and you're tested in your field. And you're tested on other general knowledge too, because the federal diploma comes again with this theory. Here you are, 1 to 2 days per week of classroom activity. You are tested in those theoretical subjects as well. And the practice is 3 to 4 days per week of training with the company. So here in the United States, I can start to talk about that a bit. There are a lot of Swiss companies that are invested in the United States. Switzerland is the 7th largest direct investor in the United States. A lot of people don't know that. I'm taking some of the wind from the ambassador sails when I talk about this, but it's true. And a lot of these companies have come over and they've brought with them the apprenticeship model, and they've wanted to expand on that, and they've contacted us to inform us and for us to help them with their network. So yes, this is going on in the States now. There are Swiss companies that are able to hire young people in this fashion. The theory is taught at the community college level. That's sort of a replacement for the vocational school that Switzerland has, which is really well developed. But we don't have that here. We do have the community colleges, which also have a workforce goal also in their work. So the community colleges are offering the education component. As soon as a lot of community colleges, I think we went through the introductions for the community colleges. Community colleges are receiving a lot of grants either from the state or from the federal level to help with the apprenticeship model. And I find that whenever a company wants to get an apprenticeship going, and I will go with them to the community college or maybe write a letter to discuss this with the community college, they'll bend over backwards to give you the courses you need when you need them as an employer. And if you can get enough young people involved in this to where you have a cohort, then it's even better for the community colleges. And they can offer the classes 1 day a week. They can offer them also remotely. They can offer them on the weekend. That's the good thing about the United States is the United States is truly a flexible country, truly a flexible country coming from someone who's lived in Europe for 25 years. I say that with a big capital F, flexible. And that's a great thing we have here. So the community colleges are willing to help the businesses to have this education component.
Let me ask you a question, Tracy.
Yes.
Comparing the community colleges with the training in Switzerland. Who pays for the classroom training in Switzerland?
Yes, that's an advantage that the Swiss have, and also the Germans. It's all paid for by the government. All education is paid for by the government. Even the universities are paid for by the government. There are fees to some universities, but they're generally free. That's something that we don't have here. However, I just finished putting my daughter through 2 years of community college, Montgomery College in Maryland. Yes, we were Rockville relatives before we moved out here to West Virginia on my farm, which we're enjoying very much. My daughter graduated after 2 years with her associate's degree, and she's transferred over to Shepherd University here in West Virginia. She swore she'd never go to West Virginia, but all of a sudden the house is built, everything's all stable, and she says, I like it. So now she's going to go to university here in West Virginia. But the point is I didn't spend a lot of money. The community colleges are not expensive. It's not a lot of money. And I think that both the state governments and some of the giving institutions and also the companies all need to find a way to cover this rather small cost of a 2-year degree, which could be done for $10,000 or less, considerably less, depending on what kind of grant money there is and what kind of support there is from the state. But for example, North Carolina, I remember when I first started doing this in the around 2009, 2010, North Carolina did not like the Swiss company Detweiler doing this apprenticeship model, and they said, we're not going to help you. 10 years later, North Carolina has completely switched gears. They say, we will pay 100% of the community college if it's completed by anybody who graduates from high school. So it's a complete turnaround to give the companies, okay, they're going to offer the education component for free. And I'm going to train them, and they're going to get a good job, and they're going to get a good degree. You know, what could go wrong with that? So that's the yes.
But let me ask you a question. For the Swiss companies that came over here and they want to do the apprenticeship thing, assuming they're not in a state where the state is putting up the money, who generally pays the community college tuition for that apprentice with that Swiss company in the United States?
It's all over the board.
Apprentice?
It's going to be both. It's sometimes, for example, in Minnesota, the company Bueller pays for it. Detweiler used to pay for it. Now they don't have to. There's others that they give some type of subsidy for tuition credits. It's kind of all over the board, but in most cases, the Swiss company is paying for it because the Swiss company is not acquiring people working on an assembly line. They're acquiring people who eventually at the age of 22, 23 are making six figures. This is in technology, this is in advanced manufacturing, and they're going to pay the price to get the people educated. It's really not that expensive. But those are the Swiss companies that have the money to do this. When you take a normal small company in the middle of Maryland and says, I've got 9 employees, I'm a small accounting company, I want to do the apprenticeship model, what can I do? That's where you need to have the support from the state to offer that.
Thank you.
So in looking at this might surprise you. The occupations for I said 248, 238, there's varying amounts of them, they change. The commercial employee, that's the number one. That's got 3/4 of all apprentices are white collar apprenticeships. And a lot of people say, well, how can that be an apprenticeship? Well, again, the apprenticeship is learning on the job. It is taking a skill. It is not assembly line worker where you just do this and that's it. It is somebody who has to use their mind and has to use their hands, and they work. They are all working, doing something that is trainable and acquirable with skills and becoming useful to the company. The commercial employee, you'll find them in the accounting department. They can specialize. They can specialize in accounting. They can specialize in HR. They can specialize in sales. They can specialize in communication. They can specialize in a lot of different areas of the commercial employee. And every single company out there in Maryland or in Switzerland or in Germany should try and hire 1 or 2 such apprentices every year. If you've got 10 or 11 people working there and you're always probably got 1 or 2 entry-level positions that are always in rotation, why not get an apprentice, open up an apprenticeship model for these people? They'll stay for the period of time and not leave you. Eventually they might, but this is what you need. The commercial employee is one of the best examples to where people say, oh, we don't have any technology around here. Oh, we don't have the employee. Sure you do. The employers are out there, and they need somebody who's able to work with their mind. And I'll show you that at the end of my presentation. Retail clerk, healthcare worker, social care worker. I was working with also with Maryland. Things are coming. I've got 2 or 3 sticks in the fire with Maryland. Also for healthcare, sort of a basic apprenticeship in healthcare. Switzerland doesn't have one, but what they do have is they have a caregiver apprenticeship, which for us, if we looked at this as Americans, we go, well, that's exactly what that is. It's healthcare, because it is very healthcare based, because you're a caregiver, and they really do educate you well in Switzerland. So they're in talks right now to go and see how this basic caregiver apprenticeship of 2 years could work in the United States for people graduating from high school who just say, I want a job, teach me something. I don't know what I want to do yet. This looks pretty easy, and I can get a degree and I can get a job right now. So this is what the other group in Maryland that I'm working with is doing. Electrician, IT, these are all, a lot of these are going to be traditional, and some of them not so. And again, IT is going to be one of the newer ones. Yes, this is one part where I always have to tell people there's not a lot of government involved in the apprenticeship system. As a matter of fact, anybody who's been in business out there, there's sort of unfortunately, a little bit of a mistrust of government people descending upon their companies with altruistic ideas of what they're going to do for them. And we should be very careful about putting a lot of government into this. The way it works in Switzerland is the following. You've got the Confederation, which is the federal government. In our case, it would be the Department of Education that would broadly, or the Department of Labor that would broadly sanctify generalities, and also to be sure that there's going to be standardization, and that the apprenticeship is going to be recognized everywhere. And there is some Confederation money for the apprenticeships in the same way that we have money for the Department of Labor and Department of Education. The cantons, which are the individual states, this is the implementation supervision, very much like the United States. All of our states, the United States, I tell my European friends, it's not America, it's the United States. There's 50 individual countries here, and each one of these states does it a little bit differently in the United States, and that's just fine. And the cantons and our states also regulate their education locally, and this is where it's paid for. Again, Jim, you asked this question, it's about who's paying for this. The cantons pay for it, the vocational school is paid for. So the employer is really getting a really great bargain. They're getting somebody who's going to, the state's going to educate them for them, and all they have to do is give them a job, but they also have to give them a mentor. And this is where the private sector comes in. Training, content, and apprenticeships. It's extremely important also, before we start calling things apprenticeships, is determine the fact as to whether anything is being taught, any skill is being imparted to a young person. This is very important, that there's a designated trainer, someone that the young person can turn to. This is my mentor, this is my trainer who's helped me through my entire apprenticeship, showed me how to use everything about a computer, showed me how to do everything. You need to have this component, otherwise it's not really an apprenticeship. So I'm giving a few caveats. I don't mean to, but this is the way that these things work, and they're really done in the private sector without a lot of government involvement. I mentioned a little bit earlier at the very beginning the memorandum of understanding. The last one we signed was during the heyday of COVID, so that's what we had at that time. The red states, you can see, this is where we have Swiss companies that are doing apprenticeship programs, and you can see that there are several in the right-to-work states. So the right-to-work states have been attractive to BMW, Boeing, a lot of the larger traditional manufacturers. However, there are a lot of companies, Swiss companies, that are in the north and are working with unions to advance their apprenticeship programs. Everyone's a little bit different, but the company does like to preserve their freedom. In Utah, Stade L'Oreal, I just got a chance to see the CEO the other night at one of our events. He's a major champion of the apprenticeship model, and he is a Swiss cowboy. He doesn't want any government involvement, doesn't want to do anything, but he has one heck of a good apprenticeship program there. He pays for the school. He goes out, he talks everywhere, and he graduates people who make our trains. So it's a really great company. And like I said, it's all over the board as to who pays and how much involvement they have with other entities. So I'm going to give you an example. Yes, just please.
Just looking at the map, it looks like there are no Swiss companies in Maryland, or no Swiss companies in Maryland with apprentices.
There are. That's a very good question. I sent out this info sheet for the investment in Maryland. I believe, I don't know if I sent that to your Maryland group. I could have not done that, but I do have a page from our investment book which shows the Swiss imprint on investment in Maryland, and it is considerable. And I don't know why this map has not been updated, but this is
Okay.
a little bit old slide.
Yeah,
No, we were very much involved. Phoenix Meccano in Frederick, and also Longia, I think, also in Maryland. They both have apprenticeships, and they are succeeding to varying degrees. But they're in advanced manufacturing. But yes, no, we do have a footprint in Maryland. That is something I will get out to Sarah right away.
that'd be great. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So here, Zurich Insurance of North America. So this is an example of what needs to happen. I believe in the United States is we have trade associations, right? We have trade associations. We know them. Let's call one the American Nursing Association. Their job is to get new members and dues, and also to lobby the government. That's what the associations do. However, in Switzerland, the trade association has a third leg, and that is standardization and training and skills. So this is something that we're lacking in the United States. Let's take our fictitious American Nursing Association. If this were the Swiss model, it would have also a training and a training arm that would basically every 2 or 3 years determine what the skills are necessary to call yourself a nurse in the United States. And every 3 years or 4 years, these associations in Switzerland come together. All of their members of the companies, they come together and say, no, there's a newest machine. We have to use this. We have to add that. I've noticed people need more training in here. And so all of the training, all the apprenticeships are tweaked every 2 or 3 or 4 years. And that's done by the associations. Again, not a lot of government interference or involvement here whatsoever. Is the associations need to rise to this here in the United States. I'll give you an example of one that does. The National Institute of Metalworking Skills, NIMS. Have you heard of them? Never heard of them? I don't blame you, because you don't need to hear of them, because they're very well organized and they do their own training for metalworking skills. And they set standards for what it takes to become a metal worker in the United States. And they're extremely successful. That's why you don't hear about them. So Zurich Insurance came to the United States and went to I don't know what the name of the association was. We'll just call it the American Association of Insurance Companies, and said, listen, a rising tide lifts all ships, and I want to work with other insurance companies to come together and determine what a skill set is for people who don't need a 4-year degree in math, but need considerably more training if they're going to be doing any type of insurance adjusting or other higher trained duties in the insurance industry. They did it. They got the association together and they determined this. And they've done this now in New York. They've done this in Chicago, and they are doing it in North Carolina, I believe. And I don't want to go any further than that. But as you can see this, they did it. They did the Swiss model, and they were successful. 3 days of on-the-job training, 2 days of college coursework. So again, that's the community college. Take a look over there. There's the education provider. These are where they're at, as I said, in the different places in America where they're at. And these are the degrees. Isn't this lovely? An associate in applied science and business administration. These young people are getting degrees while they work, while they earn. This is exactly the way this is supposed to happen. And again, some of them stay and some of them move on. But on their way in, as they leave that company, theoretically, Zurich Insurance is waiting for the next person who's been trained by Allstate Insurance, who are just as good, but they didn't have a nice package for this person, and they came to Zurich instead. So this is the way it works, and this is the way it can work here in the United States as well. And this is that commercial employee that I told you all about. 3/4 of young people do the white collar. You can specialize in insurance, and there's your example right there. Does anybody have any questions at this point? So I also sent out, Sarah sent this to you. This is now translated into English. This is basically an English translation of what the commercial apprentice would learn and what they're expected to be able to do with their diploma. When they get this diploma, again, this one is not the certificate, this is the diploma. This is what they're supposed to be able to do. So as an employer, if this person walks in your door and I say, I've got a VET diploma from Switzerland, I go, yeah, what can you do? We'll take a look. I highlighted a lot of this stuff in yellow as these buzzwords that are just going to catch the eye of any HR professional. I said, yes, I want this. They may deal with commercial correspondence, drafting, accounting, orders, correspondence and orders. Look at these duties that these people are able to perform after they're finished with their apprenticeship. These are really valuable skills, everybody. This is real stuff. I can move that out of the way. Good. Accounting. So this one is going to be correspondence and orders, accounting, and secretarial, which is basically administrative duties. The work environment. I don't know if this is going to take me down further. No. The duration is 3 years. And then here is the theoretical subjects. Now, this is not our concept of what we would have at the associate at the community college. They have to have multiple languages because Switzerland has 3 languages, and they have to be able to communicate in one of the other languages of Switzerland. So they have a lot of theoretical on language and also on social growing, social coming of age, and workplace skills. And as you can see down at the bottom of the programs, information communication, lots of hours in that. I did not, did not bring this. I did not have this. Yes, I did. Here we go. Why didn't that show up? So what I did was, if you take a look at this, I do this for every presentation. I quickly went to Indeed.com. And I did a little type. I typed in for jobs. There's over 18,000 jobs, by the way, in Maryland that fall under the categories of entry level and administrative assistant. So I typed in administrative assistant. I checked off the box entry level. That's it. And I hit enter. Over 18,000 jobs. And I just grabbed one. And I'm not going to show you the company it came from. It's a well-known company in Maryland, but this is it. This company doesn't realize it, but they have an apprenticeship position open right here. They just don't call it that. And with a little bit of tweaking, every single one of these positions could be apprenticeship positions. Take a look at this. This is called the job was assistant in operations in Bethesda. The responsibilities very similar to what you saw on the translation of the diploma. The people out there are having jobs that could easily be transferred over to this apprenticeship model and be successful. The problem is the next one, qualifications and skills, a college degree, some administrative experience. So the point is some kid getting out of college is not going to get this job, right? And then some guy who's been working in operations for 3 or 4 years but doesn't have any education is not going to get this job either, even though he's got or she's got experience. Now this one said equivalent combination of education experience will be considered. Voila, break open your Rolodex, get these people on the phone. This is exactly the type of company and position that would be ideal for an apprenticeship. And that's what I found in Maryland, and there's countless other examples of that. But now we're going to go ahead and say thank you very much for everybody. And I'm finished with that now with my presentation. I hope I didn't take too long.
That was great. Thank you, Tracy. The rest of the time is for questions from commission members.
And I've got one.
Yep.
I've got one, but I don't know how to mic. I've seen your presentation before, as you know, Tracy, including that example where you take right at the end where you take actual job openings with actual companies that are perfect for apprenticeships. Has any trade association or state government or workforce agency taken your insight and just done it and just gotten on the phone with those employers and say, have we got an apprenticeship for you?
Well, I'll tell you, I'm really glad you asked that question because the state of South Carolina actually has a working. This is where I would say the government is extremely useful. The South Carolina has set up South Carolina Apprenticeships, and they've got an army of young people. I don't want to call them young people. They've got an army of people who are just absolutely enamored by apprenticeships, and they're calling companies like crazy. And they're saying, "Can I come by and show you? Can I come by and talk to your HR people? Can I show you what you can get? You can get this tax credit. You can get this." So they are out there selling it. Extremely successful, South Carolina. And yes, there are each one has everybody has their own different way of how they're doing it. And like I said, Zurich went directly to the trade associations. They are the employer, right? They are the employer. They did it. But state-run, South Carolina, really, that's one of the best models I've seen.
But do they actually? The reason I ask is mostly and I've talked to folks in South Carolina, and when I've talked to, I just may have missed it, but when I talk to people about how they sell apprenticeships, and this happens in Maryland right now, the way we've sold youth apprenticeships, is it doesn't seem to be driven by look up the job on Indeed and find who's hiring the entry-level job and do it. It's like, what employer do I know? Let's go talk to them. But that's the question I'm asking. Have you seen anybody actually do what your example implies? You know, let's say they're 18,000. Okay, that's the low-hanging fruit. Would be the way I would think about it.
This is just me. This is my way of. I can't think of any other way to convince people to look and see what's out there and realize that you're really only a baby step away. Who's done it? Like I said, nobody in Washington D.C. that I know of. And like I told you, South Carolina does have this agency of people who go out and they're door-to-door salesmen for apprenticeships.
Gotcha. Thank you. So I got another one. Are the trade associations in Switzerland mandatory or voluntary like they are in the United States?
Ooh, good idea. Good question. I'm sure they're voluntary. I can't imagine you can get roped into some association if you don't want to be. If you want to participate in the apprenticeship program, then probably yes. As there is probably you're going to have to jump through some hoops if you're going to be able to get an apprenticeship through that's going to have the same recognized skill sets that you're getting an advantage of. You'd have to be a member of the association. I'm sure that there's a correlation, but I can't tell you 100%.
Well, the reason I'm asking, I had the impression that in Germany it is mandatory, and the advantage of mandatory is you actually cover the whole industry, as opposed to the United States. You have trade associations that only have a fraction of the people in the industry, which changes the economy to scale. I'm just curious.
It's true. You're probably right. Germany just by itself, again, my background is Germany, not so much Switzerland. As I know Germany, and there's big places, but the Swiss model, really it's small and medium sized enterprises that really uses the apprenticeship model most. So strangely enough, that's the case with that. So are they members of all the trade associations? I don't know. In Germany, yes, it just seems to be a little bit more regulated and a little bit more, and the companies are a little bit bigger. And there's just more of everything in Germany.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Jim, I have a question.
Hi, Bob.
Yeah, I've been driving. Great job, Tracy. I think I came in a little late, but I think one of the things that complicates apprenticeship here is the whole registration area, the duration of it, the fact that the skill standards are not all that standardized. Do you want to say something about that? How it's simplified in many ways in Switzerland? Or did you already tell everybody?
I went through the way you've got four. Yes, in the beginning, I just mentioned it, with 400 years of tried and tested, that you eventually get a smooth sailing apprenticeship model where there's no bumps in the roads. Young people just simply know where to go get their apprenticeship, and they're just used to the standardization. They probably can't imagine anything outside of that. There may be some rogue apprenticeships in Switzerland, or people calling themselves an apprenticeship when there's not. There's always cases like that, but I would doubt that that's trying to think of the complication. I think everyone is used to it. It's not that much paperwork. In the United States, I understand it to be a little bit more complicated with the registration. And as I mentioned earlier, in Utah, my friends over at Stadler Rail refused to register their apprenticeship. They said, we will not register this with anybody. This is our own thing and forget it. So that's an example of someone who's just done, and they got a great program.
Yeah. One more question. I understand from a friend who is married to a former Swiss apprentice that when she was, I don't know, maybe 7th grade, 8th grade, 9th grade, they would call around for appointments to, the students themselves would go out and try to find a place that they could visit for potentially going into that field. I don't know whether you discussed that, but that sounds interesting.
It is extremely interesting. So everybody, when we get up and going, or when we get somebody who's going to be the flag bearer, the Swiss and the Germans have something called a Schnuppertag, which basically means a sniffing day. And you go and industry will open their doors and invite, open house parents, young people in, and the young people will go and look at these employers. It's all over the board the way this is done. Sometimes it's done in the schools where the tables will be set up in the schools the same way that we do it here. And then there will be appointments made to go and see the places. Some kids need more help, so there are mentors inside the schools that say, hey, let me show you the way to go. There are other kids who know this is exactly what I want to do, because when I'm finished, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. The concept of the Schnuppertag, which is the ability for industry to open up. Detweiler did this in North Carolina. I remember seeing 40 of those wonderful American yellow school buses all show up with high school kids underneath this great big tent, and they got brought in. They got brought in groups, and they walked through the production area and got shown what an apprenticeship is like. It is not the 3Ds. They call them: dark, dreary, and dangerous. Not the case, not in the places I've seen.
Thanks.
If there's anybody who has any other questions, so I would like to invite all of you in advance to our National Apprenticeship Week event here in Washington, D.C. that the embassy will be doing. It's a great event, and I'll get an invitation out to Sarah when we get that far. It's going to be in November, and we really hope to see as many people as we can. And this year, so just to show you that one of the things that Switzerland has is something called the Movetia, which is an organization to help college students get mobility, but they now expanded it to apprentices and post-apprentices to get mobility as well. So they're sponsoring people who just finished their apprenticeships and taken a year off of work to go abroad and be sort of ambassadors for apprenticeships. And they sent 6 to the United States, and we at the embassy, being the innovative people that we are in the science section, we said, well, we want to be the vanguard here, and we took one of the apprentices, and his name is Nolan, and he was going to be here with me, but he is actually cooking lunch with our residence chef for somebody very important who I can't tell who it is. So I said, of course you can go do that, and I'll be able to handle this by myself. But he's a regular guy. He is a nice kid. I call him a kid because I'm old and he's young. He just finished his apprenticeship. He loves to cook. He got a great education while he was there. He's got some great background, and he just wants to go and talk to people about the apprenticeship model. So all of you, if you ever want to borrow Nolan for the next 6 months. He's here to be on your panel. He's here to talk to you. And you don't have to go into one of these high technology apprenticeships. What's wrong with being a chef? I mean, there's a lot of success and money and everything else in being a chef and in food preparation. So Nolan will be able to tell you all about that. So we have him here for the next 6 months, and there are others that are in the United States. So this is one of the things that Switzerland does, and this is one of the things that the embassy does. So National Apprenticeship Week, you can meet Nolan. You can come and talk to us with our guests there. And I don't have anything else to say. I think that you all, this is your hour, and I don't want to fill in your time with, unless I'm answering a question.
Does anybody else have any questions for Tracy? Tracy, thank you so much. This was really informative and really appreciate you. Also are the first one for our series on here, so we appreciate you being the initial participant here. So the next one of these sessions is on Australia. It's September 30th at 6 o'clock Eastern time. You should have your Zoom invites already, but if you don't, let me know and I can resend those to you. Any last words from anybody?
Thanks a lot.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Have a great morning.
Thank you. Just go and do it. You guys, let's go and do it. The American way of doing things. This is what I tell my European friends. The Americans at least go, let's go and do it. So let's take it. Let's get the apprenticeships up and going for Maryland.
Thanks, Tracy. Have a good morning.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.